Hello? Okay. Hello. Sorry, I was trying to show the animals. Okay, that kind of works. Kinda. Show the puppies in the corner. What's happening? I'm confused. Oh. I see. There we go. Okay. All right. Are we ready? We are on to chapter 9, Mrs. Weasley's Woes. Just gonna print this out. Oh. Hold on, I need to get some water and turn off the heater, and I will be right back, and let's read a chapter. Okay. Let's do this. Okay. Hello, Chris. That's okay, Master. Thank you. All right, let's get started, guys. Did you see that I found my copy? Yeah, I found it. All right, I'm just gonna read the one chapter tonight because I am pooped today. I'm ready to go sit in a bath and play Fantasy Life. Ugh, I need it. All right, Chapter 9: The Woes of Mrs. Weasley. Dumbledore's abrupt departure took Harry completely by surprise. He remained sitting where he was in the changed chair, struggling with his feelings of shock and relief. The Wizengamot were all getting to their feet, talking and gathering up their papers and packing them away. Harry stood up. Nobody seemed to be paying him the slightest bit of attention except the toad-like witch on Fudge's right, who was now gazing down at him instead of at Dumbledore. Ignoring her, he tried to catch Fudge's eye, or Madame Bones's, wanting to ask whether he was free to go, but Fudge seemed quite determined not to notice Harry, and Madame Bones was busy with her briefcase, so he took a few tentative steps toward the exit and, when nobody called him back, broke into a very fast walk. He took the last few steps at a run, wrenched open the door, and almost collided with Mr. Weasley, who was standing right outside, looking pale and apprehensive. Dumbledore didn't say— "Cleared," Harry said, pulling the door closed behind him. "Of all charges." Beaming, Mr. Weasley seized Harry by the shoulders. "Harry, that's wonderful. Well, of course, they couldn't have found you guilty, not on the evidence, but even so, I can't pretend I wasn't—" But Mr. Weasley broke off, because the courtroom door had just opened again. The Wizengamot were filing out. "Merlin's beard," said Mr. Weasley wonderingly, pulling Harry aside to let them all past. "You were tried by the full court?" "I think so," said Harry quietly. One or two of the passing wizards nodded to Harry as they passed, and a few, including Madame Bones, said, "Morning, Arthur," to Mr. Weasley, but most averted their eyes. Cornelius Fudge and the toad-like witch were almost the last to leave the dungeon. Fudge acted as though Mr. Weasley and Harry were part of the wall, but again the witch looked almost appraisingly at Harry as she passed. Last of all to pass was Percy. Like Fudge, he completely ignored his father and Harry. He marched past clutching a large roll of parchment and a handful of square quills, his back rigid and his nose in the air. The lines around Mr. Weasley's mouth tightened slightly, but other than this he gave no sign that he had noticed his third son. "I'm going to take you straight back so you can tell the others the good news," he said, beckoning Harry forward as Percy's heels disappeared up the stairs to the 9th level. "I'll drop you off on the way to that toilet in Bethnal Green. Come on." "So what will you have to do about the toilet?" Harry asked, grinning. Everything suddenly seemed 5 times funnier than usual. It was starting to sink in. He was cleared. He was going back to Hogwarts. "Oh, it's a simple enough anti-jinx," said Mr. Weasley as they mounted the stairs, "but it's not so much having to repair the damage. It's more the attitude behind the vandalism, Harry. Muggle-baiting might strike some wizards as funny, but it's an expression of something much deeper and nastier, and I, for one—" Mr. Weasley broke off in mid-sentence. They had just reached the 9th level corridor, and Cornelius Fudge was standing a few feet away from them, talking quietly to a tall man with sleek blonde hair and a pointed, pale face. The second man turned at the sound of their footsteps. He too broke off in mid-conversation, his cold grey eyes narrowed and fixed upon Harry's face. "Well, well, well, Patronus Potter," said Lucius Malfoy coolly. Harry felt winded, as though he had just walked into something heavy. He had last seen those cool gray eyes through slits in a Death Eater's hood, and last heard that man's voice jeering in a dark graveyard while Lord Voldemort tortured him. He could not believe that Lucius Malfoy dared look him in the face. He could not believe that he was there, in the Ministry of Magic, where that Cornelius Fudge was talking to him, when Harry had told Fudge mere weeks ago that Malfoy was a Death Eater. "The minister was just telling me about your lucky escape, Potter," drawled Mr. Malfoy. "Quite astonishing, the way you continue to wriggle out of very tight holes. Snake-like, in fact." Mr. Weasley gripped Harry's shoulder in warning. "Yeah," said Harry. "Yeah, I'm good at escaping." Lucius Malfoy raised his eyes to Mr. Weasley's face. "And Arthur Weasley, too. What are you doing here, Arthur?" "I work here," said Mr. Weasley shortly. "Not here, surely," said Mr. Malfoy, raising his eyebrows and glancing toward the door over Mr. Weasley's shoulder. "I thought you were up on the second floor. Don't you do something that involves sneaking Muggle artifacts home and bewitching them?" "No," said Mr. Weasley curtly, his fingers now biting into Harry's shoulder. What are you doing here, anyway?" Harry asked Lucius Malfoy. "I don't think private matters between myself and the minister are any concern of yours, Potter," said Malfoy, smoothing the front of his robes. Harry distinctly heard the gentle clinking of what sounded like a full pocket of gold. "Really, just because you are Dumbledore's favorite boy, you must not expect the same indulgence from the rest of us. Shall we go up to your office, Minister?" "Certainly," said Fudge, turning his back on Harry and Mr. Weasley. "This way, Lucius." They strode off together, talking in low voices. Mr. Weasley did not let go of Harry's shoulder until they had disappeared into the lift. Why wasn't he waiting outside Fudge's office if they got business to do together? Harry burst out furiously. What was he doing down here? "Trying to sneak down to the courtroom, if you ask me," said Mr. Weasley, looking extremely agitated as he glanced over his shoulder as though making sure they could not be overheard. "Trying to find out whether you'd been expelled or not. I'll leave a note for Dumbledore when I drop you off. He ought to know Malfoy's been talking to Fudge again." "What private business have they got together anyway?" "Gold, I expect," said Mr. Weasley angrily. "Malfoy's been giving generously to all sorts of things for years. Gets him in with the right people, then he can ask favors. Delay laws he doesn't want passed. Oh, he's very well connected, Lucius Malfoy." The lift arrived. It was empty except for a flock of memos that flapped around Mr. Weasley's head as he pressed the button for the atrium, and the doors clanged shut. He waved them away irritably. "Mr. Weasley," said Harry slowly, "if Fudge is meeting Death Eaters like Malfoy, if he's seeing them alone, how do we know they haven't put the Imperious Curse on him?" "Don't think it hadn't occurred to us, Harry," muttered Mr. Weasley. "But Dumbledore thinks Fudge is acting of his own accord at the moment, which, as Dumbledore says, is not a lot of comfort. Best not talk about it any more just now, Harry." The doors slid open and they stepped out into the now almost deserted atrium. Eric, the security man, was hidden behind his daily profit again. They had walked straight past the golden fountain before Harry remembered. "Wait," he told Mr. Weasley, and pulling his money bag from his pocket, he turned back to the fountain. "Is Snuffles here, or Asder? Can somebody tell Tyler to please go back downstairs and turn off the light? They were sleeping. I did that on purpose. The frickin' monster." "Wait," he told Mr. Weasley, and pulling his money bag from his pocket, he turned back to the fountain. He looked up into the handsome wizard's face, but up close, Harry thought he looked rather weak and foolish. The witch was wearing a vapid smile, like a beauty contestant, and from what Harry knew of goblins and centaurs, they were most unlikely to be caught staring this soppily at humans of any description. Only the house elf's attitude of creeping servility looked convincing. With a grin at the thought of what Hermione would say if she could see the statue of the elf, Harry turned his money bag upside down and emptied not just 10 galleons, but the whole contents into the pool at the statue's feet. "I knew it," yelled Ron, punching the air. "You always get away with stuff." "They were bound to clear you," said Hermione, who had looked positively faint with anxiety when Harry had entered the kitchen and was now holding a shaking hand over her eyes. "There is no case against you. None at all. None at all." "Thank you, Snuffles." Everyone seems quite relieved, though, considering they all knew I'd get off, said Harry, smiling. Mrs. Weasley was wiping her face on her apron, and Fred, George, and Ginny were doing a kind of war dance to a chant that went, "He got off, he got off, he got off." "That's enough. Settle down," shouted Mr. Weasley, though he too was smiling. "Listen, Sirius, Lucius Malfoy was at the Ministry." "What?" said Sirius sharply. "He got off, he got off, he got off. Be quiet, you three." "Yes. We saw him talking to Fudge on level 9. Then they went up to Fudge's office together. Dumbledore ought to know." "Absolutely," said Sirius. "We'll tell him, don't worry. Well, I'd better get going. There's a vomiting toilet in Bethnal Green waiting for me. Molly, I'll be late. I'm covering for Tonks, but Kingsley might be dropping in for dinner." "He got off, he got off, he got off." "That's enough, Fred, George, Ginny," said Mrs. Weasley, as Mr. Weasley left the kitchen. "Harry, dear, come and sit down. Have some lunch. You hardly ate breakfast." Ron and Hermione sat themselves down opposite him, looking happier than they had done since he had first arrived at number 12, Grimmauld Place, and Harry's feeling of giddy relief, which had been somewhat dented by his encounter with Lucius Malfoy, swelled again. The gloomy house seemed warmer and more welcoming all of a sudden. Even Creature looked less ugly as he poked his snout-like nose into the kitchen to investigate the source of all the noise. Of course, once Dumbledore turned up on your side, there was no way they were going to convict you, said Ron happily, now dishing great mounds of mashed potatoes onto everyone's plates. "Yeah, he swung it for me," said Harry. He felt that it would sound highly ungrateful, not to mention childish, to say, "I wish he'd talked to me, though, or even looked at me." And as he thought this, the scar on his forehead burned so badly that he clapped his hand to it. "What's up?" said Hermione, looking alarmed. "Scar," Harry mumbled. "But it's nothing. It happens all the time now." None of the others had noticed a thing. All of them were now helping themselves to food while gloating over Harry's narrow escape. Fred, George, and Ginny were still singing. Hermione looked rather anxious, but before she could say anything, Ron said happily, "I bet Dumbledore turns up this evening to celebrate with us, you know." "I don't think he'll be able to, Ron," said Mrs. Weasley, setting a huge plate of roast chicken down in front of Harry. "He's really very busy at the moment." Over the next few days, Harry could not help noticing that there was one person within number 12, Grimmauld Place, who did not seem wholly overjoyed that he would be returning to Hogwarts. Sirius had put up a very good show of happiness on first hearing the news, wringing Harry's hand and beaming just like the rest of them. Soon, however, he was moodier and surlier than before, talking less to everybody, even Harry, and spending increasing amounts of time shut up in his mother's room with Buckbeak. "Don't you go feeling guilty." What was that accent? I don't know what that accent was. "Don't you go feeling guilty." What is wrong with me today? My brain is just not there," said Hermione sternly, after Harry had confided some of his feelings to her and Ron while they scrubbed out a moldy cupboard on the 3rd floor a few days later. "You belong at Hogwarts, and Sirius knows it. Personally, I think he's being selfish." "That's a bit harsh, Hermione," said Ron, frowning as he attempted to prise off a bit of mold that had attached itself firmly to his finger. "You wouldn't want to be stuck inside this house without company." "He'll have company," said Hermione. "It's headquarters to the Order of Phoenix, isn't it? He just got his hopes up that Harry would be coming to live here with him." "I don't think that's true," said Harry, wringing out his cloth. "He wouldn't give me a straight answer when I asked him if I could." "He just didn't want to get his own hopes up even more," said Hermione wisely. "He probably felt a bit guilty himself, because I think a part of him was really hoping you'd be expelled. Then you'd both be outcast together." "Come off it," said Harry and Ron together, but Hermione merely shrugged. "Suit yourselves, but I sometimes think Ron's mum's right, and Sirius gets confused about whether you're you or your father, Harry." "So you think he's touched in the head?" said Harry heatedly. "No, I just think he's been very lonely for a long time," said Hermione simply. At this point, Mrs. Weasley entered the bedroom behind them. "Still not finished," she said, poking her head into the cupboard. "I thought you might be here to tell us to have a break," said Ron bitterly. "Do you know how much mold we've got rid of since we arrived here? Hi, Tyler. You were so keen to help the Order," said Mrs. Weasley. "You can do your bit by making headquarters fit to live in." "What you doing? You done with stream?"
Yeah, I'm exhausted today.
Me too. I can't even read. You want to read to them?
My reading's not good, baby.
Mine is going so terribly today.
You know, my reading voice is trash. I can't, how I would offer. They would all leave. I'm getting into the camp. Keep going.
I'm trying to see how long this is because I am exhausted and my brain is just not working today. There's another 20 pages.
You got this.
No, like my reading is really bad tonight.
What's that?
I don't know why.
Because your brain fog, man. Okay. You got this.
You were so keen to help the order, said Mrs. Weasley. You can do your bit by making headquarters fit to live in. I feel like a house elf, grumbled Ron. Well, now that you understand what dreadful lives they lead, perhaps you'll be a bit more active in SPEW, said Hermione hopefully, as Mrs. Weasley left them to it again. You know, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to show people exactly how horrible it is to clean all the time. We could do a sponsored scrub of Gryffindor Common Room. All proceeds to SPEW. It would raise awareness as well as funds. I'll sponsor you to shut up about spew, Ron muttered irritably, but only so Harry could hear him. Harry found himself daydreaming about Hogwarts more and more as the end of the holidays approached. He could not wait to see Hagrid again, to play Quidditch, even to stroll across the vegetable patches to the herbology greenhouses. It would be a treat just to leave this dusty, musty house, where half of the cupboards were still bolted shut and Creature wheezed insults out of the shadows as you passed, though Harry was careful not to say any of this within earshot of Sirius. The fact was that living at the headquarters of the anti-Voldemort movement was not nearly as interesting or exciting as Harry would have expected before he experienced it. Though members of the Order of the Phoenix came and went regularly, sometimes staying for meals, sometimes only for a few minutes, whispered conversation, Mrs. Weasley made sure that Harry and the others were kept well out of earshot, whether extendable or normal. And nobody, not even Sirius, seemed to feel that Harry needed to know anything more than he had heard on the night of his arrival. What's Mama doing?
You want to give her a walk with me after this?
Yeah. If you want to, I just printed out stuff that they sent me for the gruel making for the puppies to help wean and what to expect, like with the mom. And
Oh yeah, I thought they weren't even going to attempt it after until like a week though, because they're 3 weeks old.
yeah, but they sent
I think
us.
just the sooner the better.
Yeah, no, just to know what we're doing and what to like look forward to,
That's awesome.
because even just knowing to let them out an hour, once every hour and a half.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Would have been good, yeah.
Yeah. No, but we knew she had to go to the bathroom. She just,
Didn't want to pee outside.
she was just nervous and didn't want to
That's
follow
okay,
Randy.
it's her first day. I mean, that's pretty.
Here we go. On the very last day of the holidays, Harry was sweeping up Hedwig's owl droppings from the top of the wardrobe when Ron entered their bedroom carrying a couple of envelopes. "Book lists have arrived, he said, throwing one of the envelopes up to Harry, who was standing on a chair. About time. I thought they'd forgotten. They usually come much earlier than this. Harry swept the last of the droppings into a rubbish bag and threw the bag over Ron's head into the waste paper basket in the corner, which swallowed it and belched loudly. He then opened his letter. It contained 2 pieces of parchment, one the usual reminder that term started on the 1st of September, the other telling him which books he would need for the coming year. "Only 2 new ones," he said, reading the list. "The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 5, by Miranda Gashak, and A Defensive Magical Theory by Wilbert Slinkard. Crack. Fred and George apparated right beside Harry. He was so used to them doing this by now that he didn't even fall off his chair. "We were just wondering who assigned this Slinkard book," said Fred conversationally. "'Cause it means Dumbledore's found a new defense against the dark arts teacher," said George. "And about time, too," said Fred. "What do you mean?" Harry asked, jumping down beside them. "Well, we overheard Mum and Dad talking on the extendable ears a few weeks back," Fred told Harry. "And from what they were saying, Dumbledore was having real trouble finding anyone to do the job this year." "Not surprising, is it, when you look at what's happened to the last 4, said George. "One sacked, one dead, one memory removed, and one locked in a trunk for 9 months, said Harry, counting them off on his fingers. "Yeah, I see what you mean." "What's up with you, Ron?" asked Fred. Ron did not answer. Harry looked around. Ron was standing very still with his mouth slightly open, gaping at his letter from Hogwarts. "What's the matter?" said Fred impatiently, moving around Ron to look over his shoulder at the parchment. Fred's mouth fell open too. "Prefect," he said, staring incredulously at the letter. "Prefect." George leapt forward, seized the envelope in Ron's other hand, and turned it upside down. Harry saw something scarlet and gold fall into George's palm. "No way," said George in a hushed voice. "There's been a mistake," said Fred, snatching the letter out of Ron's grasp and holding it up to the light as though checking for a watermark. No one in their right mind would make Ron a prefect. The twins' heads turned in unison, and both of them stared at Harry. "We thought you were a cert," said Fred in a tone that suggested Harry had tricked them in some way. "We thought Dumbledore was bound to pick you," said George indignantly. "Winning the Triwizard and everything," said Fred. "I suppose all the mad stuff must have counted against him," said George to Fred. "Yeah," said Fred slowly. "Yeah, you've caused too much trouble, mate. Well, at least one of you's got their priorities right." He strode over to Harry and clapped him on the back while giving Ron a scathing look. "Prefect. Ickle Ronnie the prefect. Oh, Mom's going to be revolting," groaned George, thrusting the prefect badge back at Ron as though it might contaminate him. Ron, who still had not said a word, took the badge, stared at it for a moment, and then held it out to Harry as though asking mutely for confirmation that it was genuine. Harry took it. A large P was superimposed on the Gryffindor lion. He had seen a badge just like this on Percy's chest on his very first day at Hogwarts. The door banged open. Hermione came tearing into the room, her cheeks flushed and her hair flying. There was an envelope in her hand. Did you get—" She spotted the badge in Harry's hand and let out a shriek. "I knew it," she said excitedly, brandishing her letter. "Me too, Harry, me too." "No," said Harry quickly, pushing the badge back into Ron's hand. "It's Ron, not me." What?" "Ron's prefect, not me," Harry said. "Ron?" said Hermione, her jaw dropping. "But are you sure? I mean—" She turned red as Ron looked around at her with a defiant expression on his face. "It's my name on the letter," he said. Said Hermione, looking thoroughly bewildered. Well, wow, well done, Ron. That's really—" "Unexpected," said George, nodding. "No," said Hermione, blushing harder than ever. "No, it's not. Ron's done loads of— He's really—" The door behind her opened a little wider, and Mrs. Weasley backed into the room carrying a pile of freshly laundered robes. "Ginny said the book lists had come at least," she said, glancing around at all the envelopes as she made her way over to bed, and started sorting the robes into 2 piles. "If you give them to me, I'll take them over to Diagon Alley this afternoon and get your books while you're packing. Ron, I'll have to get you more pajamas. These are at least 6 inches too short. I can't believe how fast you're growing. What color would you like?" "Get him red and gold to match his badge," said George, smirking. "Match his what?" said Mrs. Weasley absently, rolling up a pair of maroon socks and placing them on Ron's pile. "His badge," said Fred, with the air of getting the worst over quickly. "His lovely shiny new prefect's badge." Fred's words took a moment to penetrate Mrs. Weasley's preoccupation about pajamas. "But, Ron, you're not—" Ron held up his badge. Mrs. Weasley let out a shriek just like Hermione's. "I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Oh, Ron, how wonderful. A prefect. That's everyone in the family. What are Fred and I, next-door neighbors?" said George indignantly, as his mother pushed him aside and flung her arms around her youngest son. Wait until your father hears. Ron, I'm so proud of you. What wonderful news. You could end up head boy just like Bill and Percy. It's the first step. Oh, what a thing to happen in the middle of all this worry. I'm just thrilled. Oh, Ronnie. Fred and George were both making loud retching noises behind her back, but Mrs. Weasley did not notice. Arms tight around Ron's neck, she was kissing him all over his face, which had turned a brighter scarlet than his badge. Mom, don't. Mom, get a grip, he muttered, trying to push her away. Hi, Red Velvet. Hello. She let go of him and said breathlessly, Well, what will it be? We gave Percy an owl, but you've already got one, of course. What do you mean? Said Ron, looking as though he did not dare believe his ears. You've got to have a reward for this, said Mrs. Weasley fondly. How about a new set of dress robes? We've already bought him some, said Fred sourly, who looked as though he sincerely regretted this generosity. Or a new cauldron. Charlie's old one's rusting through, or a new rat. You always liked scabbers. Mum, said Ron hopefully, can I have a new broom? Mrs. Weasley's face fell slightly. Broomsticks were expensive. Not a really good one, Ron hastened to add. Just a new one for a change. Mrs. Weasley hesitated, then smiled. Of course you can. Well, I'd better get going if I've got a broom to buy, too. I'll see you all later. Little Ronnie, a prefect. And don't forget to pack your trunks. A prefect. Oh, I'm all of a dither. She gave Ron yet another kiss on the cheek, sniffed loudly, and bustled from the room. Fred and George exchanged looks. You don't mind if we don't kiss you, do you, Ron? Said Fred in a falsely anxious voice. We could curtsy, if you like, said George. Oh, shut up, said Ron, scowling at them. Or what? Said Fred, an evil grin spreading across his face. Going to put us in detention? I'd love to see him try, sniggered George. He could if you don't watch out, said Hermione angrily, at which Fred and George burst out laughing and Ron muttered, Drop it, Hermione. We're going to have to watch our step, George, said Fred, pretending to tremble, with these two on our case. Yeah, looks like our law-breaking days are finally over, said George, shaking his head, and with another loud crack, the twins disapparated. Those two, said Hermione furiously, staring up at the ceiling, through which they could now hear Fred and George roaring with laughter in the room upstairs. Don't pay any attention to them, Ron. They're only jealous. I don't think they are, said Ron doubtfully, also looking up at the ceiling. They've always said only prats become prefects. Still, he added on a happier note, they've never had new brooms. I wish I could go with Mum and choose. She'll never be able to afford a Nimbus, but there's the new clean sweep out. That'd be great. Yeah, I think I'll go and tell her I like the clean sweep, just so she knows. He dashed from the room, leaving Harry and Hermione alone. For some reason, Harry found that he did not want to look at Hermione. He turned to his bed, picked up the pile of clean robes Mrs. Weasley had laid upon it, and crossed the room to his trunk. Harry, said Hermione tentatively. Well done, said Harry, so heartily it did not sound like his voice at all, and still not looking at her. Brilliant, prefect, great. Thanks. Harry, could I borrow Hedwig so I can tell Mum and Dad? They'll be really pleased. I mean, prefect is something they can understand. Yeah, no problem, said Harry, still in the horrible, hearty voice that did not belong to him. Take her. He leaned over his trunk, laid the robes on the bottom of it, and pretended to be rummaging for something while Hermione crossed to the wardrobe and called Hedwig down. A few moments passed. Harry heard the door close, but remained bent double, listening. The only sounds he could hear were the blank picture on the wall sniggering again, and the waste paper basket in the corner coughing up the owl droppings. He straightened up and looked behind him. Hermione and Hedwig had gone. Harry returned slowly to his bed and sank onto it, gazing unseeingly at the front of the wardrobe. He had forgotten completely about prefects being chosen in the 5th year. He had been too anxious about the possibility of being expelled to spare a thought for the fact that badges must be winging their way around toward certain people. But if he had remembered, if he had thought about it, what would he have expected? Not this, said a small and truthful voice inside his head. Harry screwed up his face and buried it in his hands. He could not lie to himself. If he had known the prefect badge was on his way, he would have expected it to come to him, not Ron. Did this make him as arrogant as Draco Malfoy? Did he think himself superior to everyone else? Did he really believe he was better than Ron? No, said the small voice defiantly. Is that true? Harry wondered, anxiously probing his own feelings. I'm better at Quidditch, said the voice. But I'm not better at anything else. That was definitely true, Harry thought. He was no better than Ron in lessons. But what about outside lessons? What about those adventures he, Ron, and Hermione had together since they had started at Hogwarts, often risking much worse than expulsion? Well, Ron and Hermione were with me most of the time, said the voice in Harry's head. Not all the time, though, Harry argued with himself. They didn't fight to quarrel with me. They didn't take on Riddle and the Basilisk.
Basilisk.
Play your game.
It's definitely the basilisk.
I know. But they can correct me, not you, while you play AFK Arena behind me on your phone.
Why?
Someone wants to get bopped.
I'm listening very intently.
No, you're not. They didn't take on Riddle and the Basilisk? Is that what you said? The Basilisk. They didn't get rid of all those Dementors the night Sirius escaped. They weren't in that graveyard with me the night Voldemort returned. And the same feeling of ill usage that had overwhelmed him on the night he had arrived rose again. I've definitely done more, Harry thought indignantly. I've done more than either of them. But maybe, said the small voice fairly, maybe Dumbledore doesn't choose prefects because they've got themselves into a load of dangerous situations. Maybe he chooses them for other reasons. Ron must have something you don't. Harry opened his eyes and stared through his fingers at the wardrobe's clawed feet, remembering what Fred had said. No one in their right mind would make Ron a prefect. Harry gave a small sort of laughter. A second later, he felt sickened with himself. Ron had not asked Dumbledore to give him the prefect badge. This was not Ron's fault. Was he, Harry, Ron's best friend in the world, going to sulk because he didn't have a badge, laugh with the twins behind Ron's back, ruin this for Ron when, for the first time, he had beaten Harry at something? At this point, Harry heard Ron's footsteps on the stairs again. He stood up, straightened his glasses, and hitched a grin onto his face as Ron bounded back through the door. Just caught her, he said happily. She says she'll get the clean sweep if she can. Cool, Harry said, and he was relieved to hear that his voice had stopped sounding hearty. Listen, Ron, well done, mate. The smile faded off Ron's face. I never thought it would be me, he said, shaking his head. I thought it would be you. Nah, I've caused too much trouble, Harry said, echoing Fred. Yeah, said Ron. Yeah, I suppose. Well, we'd better get our trunks packed, hadn't we? It was odd how widely their possessions seemed to have scattered themselves since they had arrived. It took them most of the afternoon to retrieve their books and belongings from all over the house and stow them back inside their school trunks. Harry noticed that Ron kept moving his prefect's badge around, first placing it on his bedside table, then putting it into his jeans pocket, then taking it out and laying it on his folded robes, as though to see the effect of the red on the black. Only when Fred and George dropped in and offered to attach it to his forehead with a permanent sticking charm did he wrap it tenderly in his maroon socks and lock it in his trunk. Mrs. Weasley returned from Diagon Alley around 6 o'clock, laden with books and carrying a long package wrapped in thick brown paper that Ron took from her with a moan of longing. Never mind unwrapping it now. People are arriving for dinner. I want you all downstairs, she said. But the moment she was out of sight, Ron ripped off the paper in a frenzy and examined every inch of his new room, an ecstatic expression on his face. Down in the basement, Mrs. Weasley had hung a scarlet banner over the heavily laden dinner table, which read, Congratulations, Ron and Hermione, new prefects. She looked in a better mood than Harry had seen her all holiday. I thought we'd have a little party, not a sit-down dinner, she told Harry, Ron, and Hermione, Fred, George, and Ginny, as they entered the room. Your father and Bill are on their way, Ron. I've sent them both owls, and they're thrilled, she added, beaming. Fred rolled his eyes. Sirius, Lupin, Tonks, and Kingsley were already there, and Mad-Eye Moody stumped in shortly after Harry had got himself a butterbeer. Oh, Alistair, I'm glad you're here, said Mrs. Weasley brightly, as Mad-Eye shrugged off his traveling cloak. We've been wanting to ask you for ages. Could you have a look in the writing desk in the drawing room and tell us what's inside it? We haven't wanted to open it just in case it's something really nasty. No problem, Molly. Moody's electric blue eye swiveled upward and stared fixedly through the ceiling of the kitchen. Drawing room, he growled as the pupil contracted. Desk in the corner? Yeah, I see it. Yeah, it's a boggart. Want me to go up and get rid of it, Molly? No, I'll do it myself later, beamed Mrs. Weasley. You have your drink. We're having a little bit of a celebration, actually, she gestured at the scarlet banner. Fourth prefect in the family, she said fondly, ruffling Ron's hair. Prefect, growled Moody, his normal eye on Ron, and his magical eye swiveling around to gaze into the side of his head. Harry had the very uncomfortable feeling it was looking at him and moved away toward Sirius and Lupin. Well, congratulations, said Moody, still glaring at Ron with his normal eye. Authority figures always attract trouble, but I suppose Dumbledore thinks you can withstand most major jinxes, or he wouldn't have appointed you. Ron looked rather startled at this view of the matter, but was saved the trouble of responding by the arrival of his father and eldest brother. Mrs. Weasley was in such a good mood she did not even complain that they had brought Mundungus with them, too. He was wearing a long overcoat that seemed oddly lumpy in unlikely places, and declined the offer to remove it, and put it with Moody's traveling cloak. Well, I think a toast is in order, said Mr. Weasley, when everyone had a drink. He raised his goblet. To Ron and Hermione, the new Gryffindor prefects. Dynamite? That's funny. Oh, look at Molly. That's so sweet.
Oh.
Okay. You think I can make it another 9 pages?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. I know I'm super thirsty today. Ron and Hermione beamed as everyone drank to them and then applauded. I was never a prefect myself, said Tonks brightly from behind Harry as everybody moved toward the table to help themselves to food. Her hair was tomato red and waist-length today. She looked like Ginny's older sister. My head of house said I lacked certain necessary qualities. Like what? Said Ginny, who was choosing a baked potato. Like the ability to behave myself, said Tonks. Ginny laughed. Hermione looked as though she did not know whether to smile or not, and compromised by taking an extra-large gulp of butterbeer and choking on it. What about you, Sirius? Ginny asked, thumping Hermione on the back. Sirius, who was right beside Harry, let out his usual bark-like laugh. No one would have made me a prefect. I spent too much time in detention with James. Lupin was the good boy. He got the badge. I think Dumbledore might have hoped that I would be able to exercise some control over my best friends, said Lupin. I need scarcely say that I failed dismally. Harry's mood suddenly lifted. His father had not been a prefect either. All at once the party seemed much more enjoyable. He loaded up his plate, feeling unusually fond of everyone in the room. Ron was rhapsodizing about his new broom to anybody who would listen. Not to 70 in 10 seconds. Not bad, is it? When you think the Comet 290 is only not to 60, and that's with a decent tailwind according to which broomstick. Hermione was talking very earnestly to Lupin about her view of elf rights. I mean, it's the same kind of nonsense as werewolf segregation, isn't it? It all stems from this horrible thing wizards have of thinking they're superior to other creatures. Mrs. Weasley and Bill were having their usual argument about Bill's hair. Getting really out of hand, and you're so good-looking. It would look much better shorter, wouldn't it, Harry? I don't know, said Harry, slightly alarmed at being asked his opinion. He slid away from them in the direction of Fred and George, who were huddled in a corner with Mundungus. Mundungus stopped talking when he saw Harry, but Fred winked and beckoned Harry closer. It's okay. We can trust Harry. He's our financial backer. Look what Dung's gotten us, said George, holding out his hand to Harry. It was full of what looked like shriveled black pods. A faint rattling noise was coming from them, even though they were completely stationary. Venomous tentacula seeds, said George. We need them for the skiving snack boxes, but they're a Class C non-tradable substance, so we've been having a bit of trouble getting hold of them. 10 galleons the lot, then, Dung, said Fred. With all the trouble I went to get 'em, said Mundungus, his saggy, bloodshot eyes stretching even wider. I'm sorry, lads, but I'm not taking a nut under 20. Dung likes his little joke, Fred said to Harry. Yeah, his best one so far has been 6 sickles for a bag of gnarl quills, said George. Be careful, Harry warned them quietly. What? Mum's busy cooing over Prefect Ron. We're okay. But Moody could have his eye on you, Harry pointed out. Mundungus looked nervously over his shoulder. Good point, that, he grunted. All right, lads, 10 it is, if you'll take 'em quick. Cheers, Harry, said Fred delightedly, when Mundungus had emptied his pockets into the twins' outstretched hands and scuttled off toward the food. We'd better get these upstairs. Harry watched them go, feeling slightly uneasy. It had just occurred to him that Mr. and Mrs. Weasley would want to know how Fred and George were financing their joke shop business when, as was inevitable, they finally found out about it. Giving the twins his Triwizard winnings had seemed a simple thing to do at the time, but what if it led to another family row and a Percy-like estrangement? Would Mrs. Weasley still feel that Harry was as good as her son if she found out he had made it possible for Fred and George to start a career she thought quite unsuitable? Standing where the twins had left him with nothing but a guilty weight in the pit of his stomach for company, Harry caught the sound of his own name. Kingsley Shacklebolt's deep voice was audible even over the surrounding chatter. Why, Dumbledore didn't make Potter a prefect, said Kingsley. He'll have had his reasons, replied Lupin, but it would have showed confidence in him. It's what I've done, persisted Kingsley, especially with the Daily Prophet having a go at him every few days. Harry did not look around. He did not want Lupin or Kingsley to know he had heard. He followed Mundungus back toward the table, though not remotely hungry. His pleasure in the party had evaporated as quickly as it had come. He wished he were upstairs in bed. Mad-Eye Moody was sniffing at a chicken leg with what remained of his nose. Evidently he could not detect any trace of poison, because he then tore a strip off of it with his teeth. The handle's made of Spanish oak with anti-jinx varnish and inbuilt vibration control, Ron was saying to Tonks. Mrs. Weasley yawned widely. Well, I think I'll sort out that boggart before I turn in. Arthur, I don't want this lot up too late, all right? Night, Harry, dear. She left the kitchen. Harry set down his plate and wondered whether he could follow her without attracting attention. You all right, Potter? Grunted Moody. Yeah, fine, lied Harry. Moody took a swig from his hip flask, his electric blue eyes staring sideways at Harry. Come here. I've got something that might interest you, he said. From an inner pocket of his robes, Moody pulled a very tattered old wizarding photograph. Original Order of the Phoenix, growled Moody. Found it last night when I was looking for my spare invisibility cloak, seeing as Podmore hasn't had the manners to return my best one. Thought people like to see it. Harry took the photograph. A small crowd of people, some waving at him, others lifting their glasses, looked back up at him. There's me, said Moody unnecessarily, pointing at himself. The Moody in the picture was unmistakable, though his hair was slightly less gray and his nose was intact. And there's Dumbledore beside me. Daedalus Diggle on the other side. That's Marlene McKinnon. She was killed 2 weeks after this was taken. They got her whole family. That's Frank and Alice Longbottom. Harry's stomach, already uncomfortable, clenched as he looked at Alice Longbottom. He knew her round, friendly face very well, even though he had never met her, because she was the image of her son, Neville. Poor devils, growled Moody. Better dead than what happened to him. And that's Emmeline Vance. You've met her, and there's Lupin, obviously. Benji Fenwick, he copped it too. We only ever found bits of him. Shift aside there, he added, poking the picture and the little photographic people edged sideways so that those who were partially obscured could move to the front. That's Edgar Bones, brother of Amelia Bones. They got him and his family too. He was a great wizard. Sturgis Podmore, blimey, he looks young. Caradoc Dearborn vanished 6 months after this. We never found his body. Hagrid, of course, looks exactly the same as ever. Elphius Doge, you've met him. I've forgotten he used to wear that stupid hat. Gideon Pruitt, it took 5 Death Eaters to kill him and his brother Fabian. They fought like heroes. Budge along, budge along. The little people in the photograph jostled among themselves, and those hidden right at the back appeared at the forefront of the picture. That's Dumbledore's brother, Aberforth. Only time I ever met him, strange bloke. That's Dorcas Meadows. Voldemort killed her personally. Sirius, when he had still had short hair, and there you go. Thought that would interest you. Harry's heart turned over. His mother and father were beaming up at him, sitting on either side of a small, watery-eyed man Harry recognized at once as Wormtail. He was the one who had betrayed their whereabouts to Voldemort and so helped bring about their deaths. Huh? Said Moody. Harry looked up into Moody's heavily scarred and pitted face. Evidently, Moody was under the impression he had just given Harry a bit of a treat. Yeah, said Harry, attempting to grin again. Listen, I've just remembered, I haven't packed my... He was spared the trouble of inventing an object he had not packed. Sirius had just said, "What's that you got there, Mad-Eye?" And Moody had turned toward him. Harry crossed the kitchen, slipped through the door, and up the stairs before anyone could call him back. He did not know why he had received such a shock. He had seen his parents' pictures before, after all, and he had met Wormtail, but to have them sprung on him like that, when he was least expecting it, no one would like that, he thought angrily. And then to see them surrounded by all those other happy faces, Benji Fenwick, who had been found in bits, and Gideon Pruitt, who had died like a hero, and the Longbottoms, who had been tortured into madness, all waving happily out of the photograph forevermore, not knowing that they were doomed. Well, Moody might find that interesting. He, Harry, found it disturbing. Harry tiptoed up the stairs in the hall, past the stuffed elf heads, glad to be on his own again. But as he approached the first landing, he heard noises. Someone was sobbing in the drawing room. "Hello?" Harry said. There was no answer, but the sobbing continued. He climbed the remaining stairs 2 at a time, walked across the landing, and opened the drawing room door. Someone was cowering against the dark wall, her wand in her hand, her whole body shaking with sobs. Sprawled on the dusty old carpet in a patch of moonlight, clearly dead, was Ron. All the air seemed to vanish from Harry's lungs. He felt as though he were falling through the floor. His brain turned icy cold. Ron, dead. No, it couldn't be. But wait a moment. It couldn't be. Ron was downstairs. Mrs. Weasley? Ridiculous, Mrs. Weasley sobbed, pointing her shaking wand at Ron's body. Crack. Ron's body turned into bills, spread-eagled on his back, his eyes wide open and empty. Mrs. Weasley sobbed harder than ever. Ridiculous, she sobbed again. Crack. Mr. Weasley's body replaced Bill's, his glasses askew, a trickle of blood running down his face. No, Mrs. Weasley moaned. No, ridiculous, ridiculous, ridiculous. Crack. Dead twins. Crack. Dead Percy. Crack. Dead Harry. Mrs. Weasley, just get out of here, shouted Harry, staring down at his own dead body on the floor. Let someone else... What's going on? Lupin had come running into the room, closely followed by Sirius, with Moody stumping along behind them. Lupin looked from Mrs. Weasley to the dead Harry on the floor and seemed to understand in an instant. Pulling out his own wand, he said very firmly and clearly, "Ridiculous." Harry's body vanished. A silvery orb hung in the air over the spot where it had lain. Lupin waved his wand once more, and the orb vanished in a puff of smoke. Oh, gulped Mrs. Weasley, and she broke into a storm of crying, her face in her hands. "Molly," said Lupin bleakly, walking over to her. "Molly, don't." Next second she was sobbing her heart out on Lupin's shoulder. "Molly, it was just a boggart," he said soothingly, patting her on the head. "Just a stupid boggart." "I see them dead all the time," Mrs. Weasley moaned into his shoulder. "All the time. I dream about it." Sirius was staring at the patch of carpet where the boggart, pretending to be Harry's body, had lain. Moody was looking at Harry, who avoided his gaze. He had a funny feeling Moody's magical eye had followed him all the way out of the kitchen. "Don't tell Arthur," Mrs. Weasley was gulping now, mopping her eyes frantically with her cuffs. "I don't want him to know. Being silly." Lupin handed her a handkerchief, and she blew her nose. "Harry, I'm so sorry. What must you think of me?" she said shakily, not even able to get rid of a boggart. "Don't be stupid," said Harry, trying to smile. "I'm just so worried," she said, tears spilling out of her eyes again. "Half the family's in the order. It'll be a miracle if we all come through this. And Percy's not talking to us. What if something dreadful happens and we had never made up? And what's going to happen if Arthur and I get killed? Who's going to look after Ron and Ginny? I feel like a monster. I haven't thought about this with her. I was just like, why is she being so annoying? Like, she's just being way too overprotective. But this just totally spelled it out. Like, that being a part of the Order of the Phoenix is a very, very, very serious, dangerous thing. And if it's kind of it's worse. It's like knowing that your kids are going to be on the front lines of a war.
Yeah.
Not even just like, oh, you're going to you're flying over, You don't know what they're really going to do. Like, you know for a fact that they are going to be targets. That it's like... I didn't even... Poor Mrs. Weasley.
She's such a sweetheart, too.
Molly, that's enough, said Lupin firmly. This isn't like last time. The Order is better prepared. We've got a head start. We know what Voldemort's up to. Mrs. Weasley gave a little squeak of fright at the sound of his name. Oh, Molly, come on. It's about time you got used to hearing it. Look, I can't promise no one's going to get hurt. Nobody can promise that, but we're much better off than we were last time. You weren't in the Order then. You don't understand. Last time we were outnumbered 20-1 by the Death Eaters, and they were picking us off one by one. Harry thought of the photograph again, of his parents' beaming faces. He knew Moody was still watching him. Hello, Finny. Harry thought of the photograph again. Oh, I already read that, sorry. Don't worry about Percy, said Sirius abruptly. He'll come around. It's a matter of time before Voldemort moves into the open. Once he does, the whole ministry is going to be begging us to forgive them. And I'm not sure I'll be accepting their apology, he added bitterly. And as for who's going to look after Ron and Ginny if you and Arthur died, said Lupin, smiling slightly. What do you think we'd do, let them starve? Oh, hi, Hummer. Hi, Finny. Mrs. Weasley smiled tremulously. Being silly, she muttered again, mopping her eyes. But Harry, closing his bedroom door behind him some 10 minutes later, could not think Mrs. Weasley silly. He could still see his parents beaming up at him from the tattered old photograph, unaware that their lives, like so many of those around them, were drawing to a close. The image of the boggart posing as the corpse of each member of Mrs. Weasley's family in turn kept flashing before his eyes. Without warning, the scar on his forehead seared with pain again, and his stomach churned horribly. Cut it out, he said firmly, rubbing the scar as the pain receded again. First sign of madness, talking to your own head, said a sly voice from the empty picture on the wall. Harry ignored it. He felt older than he had ever felt in his life, and it seemed extraordinary to him that barely an hour ago he had been worried about a joke shop and who had gotten a prefect's badge. And that is the end of chapter 9. On Monday, we will be reading chapter 10, Luna Lovegood.
Oh,
Get to meet Luna.
Yes. You're Luna.
I'm Luna.
In a sense.
Am I not Tonks?
No, you're more Luna than Tonks.
But I'm so clumsy.
So.
Literally every time Tonks wants to do anything, she breaks something.
You're clumsy. I don't know if you're that clumsy.
I actually feel like we should let them sleep. She looks real comfy.
Yeah, but then you walk up there and she immediately gets up. She's like any.
We'll walk up slowly and we'll see.
If they wait, I think that's what we should.
What do you think about me setting them down here?
I think they're in a perfect spot.
You sure?
Why are you worried about it? They're so good.
I guess because with her, she's not going to the bathroom in there. And she went on the carpet twice.
Yeah, but it's her first day.
But she doesn't like the wood floor and she likes the concrete. We'll give them another day, but I just think, like, now that I'm thinking about it, if we
can't baby her. Remember, like, we need her to be uncomfortable. Like, if she's gonna find a home and stuff like that, we need to get her used to the hardwood, not make it okay. We gotta slowly wean her into being comfortable with these things. So it's because
I was thinking about
a pretty big thing if we have to put on notes.
I think so. She's thinking of it as like, don't poop where you sleep, sort of thing. Yeah. So if we put the second gate around outside it, so we open one and put the gate on the outside and put a potty pad out there, so she thinks like, I can poop here because it's outside.
No, that's not a bad idea. That's not bad at all. It'd be very easy for us to shift the gate and stuff like that too when we have the second one. We have 2 now, so
yeah,
we could definitely do that. But yeah, I think we should just make her comfortable with the hardwood. Like, give her treats, make her walk on it until she realizes it's okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, guys. Well, thank you for being here. It was fun. I'm glad you guys got to see a little stream of them, because this wasn't a very good thing when I had gone up there to hang out with them, so I just went on my phone for a little bit. They were climbing all over me like a jungle gym. It was so cute. I'm sure there's some cute clips. I'll have to go check them out. I'll check out her claws. It might be her claws as well. She needs a cut, because walking on long.
Yeah, I kind of feel unbalanced. That's good.
We'll check it out. All right, guys.
It seems more like she's just scared. But
yeah, she's just nervous.
She's very scared.
thank you guys so much for being here. Tomorrow we will have a big stream. Obviously intertwined with, I'm gonna play some Luigi's Mansion, some Just Dance. We'll bring out the wheel for some fun stuff. We are gonna be donating to, I need to look at tonight for a foster or a program, because I was gonna do proceeds because of Pixel that had passed away, and now that we're doing a foster thing, I mean, it kind of sucks. I was telling them about the league and how great they are. I didn't say which one it is, but just kind of told them that, like, they're really big, they're really good, and I mean, it's far enough away from us
Yeah,
that
we
if
could.
like we could, like, because we're gonna be vlogging things, and there's gonna be times that you guys might actually fall in love with a dog, and if you really really want one, we can tell the shelter, like, hey, we have a friend that's interested,
They
and
kind of they advise that they want us to
yeah,
try
they
and
want
find
that to
people if
happen,
we
to
can.
like get, so even though there's 100% adoption rate, just the least amount of time that they're in sitting there, is good. You can just tell us where the dogs are from. What do you mean? I'll take all of them.
That'd be the same thing, I think.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Even though I think there's no reason not to at this point. But this is more your decision to make, not mine.
I think it's further enough away, like,
Mine too.
because it's in Denver, like, and we it's just that, like, because we've been going to Denver so much lately, it makes me a little nervous. But I guess not enough. Like, you would have to be waiting for us and being creepy and know exactly where we're going in Denver.
I guess the big thing would be if we did say the place, we just never say when we're going there.
Yeah.
That'd be the only thing we'd have to not do.
Yeah, but then
Just
there's
never-
people that could just literally, I don't want anything to happen to the shelter. I know that sounds like super crazy, but, like, I don't know. I just think of the scary people in this world, and the people that have taken days out of their time to make awful things about me. And if they can't find me, but they know where I go, I don't know. I just have to be. Yeah, true, Lambert. Well, I have to decide tonight, but we'll talk about it. I need to go brainstorm anyways about things I want to do tomorrow. But
You know how I feel about that. It's mostly just gonna be like, we just gotta measure out, like, do we think it'd be more good that will come from us doing this on, like, the very small chance, even though there is a chance of someone doing something that radical.
I don't know if it's necessary though. I like, if somebody that we know or is interested in the adoption, we can tell them, and we can, like, have a conversation with them over Discord or something, or like a video chat, to make sure that we trust them before telling them where the place is.
Yeah, I guess what we could do is just open up an email
Mm-hmm.
just for this.
Yeah,
Like, if
that's
instead
what
of
I'm saying,
adopting
Ryan.
a
Case
dog,
by case.
Let us know.
Yeah, we'll see.
We
We'll
could even
figure
give
it
a
out.
charity. We could even do charity for them and stuff like that, like a separate thing. And the money for that we could use to help viewers and stuff like that, even like fly in and get the dog and stuff like that if you really wanted
True.
to take it above.
True.
So it wouldn't just have to be local.
Yeah.
Like people within like a state, we could just have anybody.
I mean, we can go and
Very
look
cool.
at, like, I'll look at some foster programs tonight. 'Cause sometimes I feel like this one is very well off, like, very good. Like, people, there's there's animals and stuff coming into Colorado from out of state, from all over, because they do really well. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You keep thinking that we should help like a bad shelter.
Not a bad shelter. It's just like, should we be putting our time and effort into smaller shelters that need help?
No, I think that you have a place that has done so well because they're doing it the right way that this is where you can continue to expand. Like big places like this are what organize massive expansion. Like, this would be the place you'd want to put all your efforts in, because they can, like, the fact that they're taking dogs in from, like, out of state and shit, like, that just shows how, like, imagine
Does
if
it
they
not
were
make you
bigger.
nervous that they have 100% adoption rate?
No.
I actually don't like saying it out loud because I kind of want to like just keep investigating and interrogating them like you have a perfect adoption rate.
Yeah, because people that basically
Nope. So what does that mean about? So what are their standards
they will
for?
never euthanize a dog. That there, I mean, there could be dogs there that sit there their whole life in the place, but they will never euthanize. Every dog that comes in is gonna get adopted. That's what it means. That means there's no euthanization for like overcrowding.
Yeah, but they have euthanization for bad behavior or.
Yeah. Or for like if it's too medically extreme. Yeah.
I mean, how? But I guess I want to know how long does a dog, on average, stay there?
That would be a good question. But there might be some that have literally been there their whole life. It's possible. Or they just never get adopted, but they just stay there and they care for them because they have the money.
Good point, Finney.
I say.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. People would just do it just for the sake of
Yeah, definitely. We'll figure it out. Either way.
5 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
They, they're gonna get a lot of praise and stuff for coming to get an animal, but if they don't take
Yeah.
care of it.
It actually makes me feel uncomfortable that so many people are like, wow, you're so amazing, Lauren. It's like, to be honest, I'm upset that I haven't. I mean, I guess I was never in a really position before with the bunnies and stuff, but it still took us a bit to like just do it. We should have been doing this for a long time. We have the capacity, we have the home, we work from home.
I'm worried about that. We're doing it now. That's what matters.
I know, but because I want to encourage people to think like it's not that amazing. Like we can all do this. Like we can all like not all of us, but a lot of us. It's not as difficult as you think.
Yeah.
Like we're not saints for this.
Especially
Like this is really fun for us actually.
I don't think a lot of shelters do what these people do. Like this place provides the food, the care, the everything if you need it. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of a foster program that good. That actually you just don't need to do anything but just have a space and time. That's crazy. I mean, most shelters need food. Or they're just like that's how tight they are. That's why this place is so amazing in my opinion.
But that's why I want to help fosters. For those that can't get to this one, even though it's like a central hub, it's like for those that can't get to it.
No, I get that.
That's what makes me want to help out in those ways. Queefy keeps running up and down the stairs. 100% adoption rate for dogs that are suited adopted. Yeah, so they were telling us that, but they were honest about it, like several years ago. Like they're good now, but several years ago, like a decade ago, they needed space and they had to put down some dogs that they didn't want to, and it was rough. But they were saying now is the perfect time to be a foster because it's just, there's always going to be times that, maybe one of the babies isn't going to make it, especially if we do this for years and doing kittens and stuff.
Oh, especially the bottle feeds.
Yeah, because we're signing up for bottle feeding as well. But they said now it's like they do have really good behaviorists, and like even just making sure that we can't get like today, or yesterday we wanted to get the kittens, right? We couldn't get the kittens because we haven't done like a clicker training class. We didn't do it an hour and a half little like webinar like thing. Like they're taking it very serious. And I feel like other programs don't do that because they just can't. They can't afford it. But I'm glad that they are. Like I'm glad that they're taking this real seriously. Some of the things are repeating a lot, but it's like you gotta get this stuff in your head.
They're making it you do this. It's because you really want to do it.
Yeah. That you're not just doing this because it's like, want to have fun or puppies,
feel
cool.
like having a pet now. Yeah, exactly. So you really have to want to do it right.
Yeah. No, this place is super together. They say that the only time that they ever euthanize is if they have something that they can't fix physically and they know that they're going to suffer. Either they're suffering then or they're going to suffer in the future when they grow up. Like if a cat has parvo. Or no, not parvo. Parvo? I think dogs get parvo. But it's this certain thing that initially they might seem fine, but they're going to grow up real bad. So they euthanize it. And because it's also very contagious to the other cats and stuff. Yeah, dogs get parvo. I'm forgetting. Perk? I don't know what it is. Oh, she looks so sweet. She's like, oh, hello. But yeah, no, they seem like they're really, really, really taking this. Like they're very sweet. And even just to see how they handled her pooping there, like they didn't even bat an eyelid. Like not even anything. Not like, oh, sweetie, no. Like, why'd you do? You know, it was just like, hey, you know, you're right. We've been really busy and we probably should have taken you out. I'm sorry. That's okay. And she, you know, she went on the mat and they were just really sweet. And it smelled like, guys, you don't understand. But yeah, no, they were very, very sweet. I like every single one of them. I have yet to meet a volunteer or a worker there that was not incredibly patient, incredibly kind, incredibly knowledgeable. And I liked that. So I think it's a good cause. But I don't know, that had just been kind of popping in my head every now and then of just like, should we be donating at the same time to a lesser shelter while, you know, providing our time for these? So that's no, they actually use they use Science Diet. Seems good. Oh, look at, he's trying to get her out. Look at those puppies. All right, guys. Pan-Luke. There it is, Pan-Luke. There it is, Finny. Pan-Luke. Of how they would use the donos. True. That's a good point. This is a very well trusted one. You just noticed that, Zoigles. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna go read what we need to do and what we should look for, and set her up a little bit better. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Probably happen sometime in the afternoon. I want to start between 12 and 3 my time. So 11 and 2 PST. And go for a few hours. We can do some fun stuff with the puppies. Do a little puppy stream. As well as, are they going to go for a walk? Oh no, okay. I'm going to go set them up. All right. Thank you guys for being here. I love you. I appreciate you. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye. Bye. Hello? Computer? Okay.